Hello, my dears. I'm Martha Thompson, and I'm 75 years old now. I know I don't look it, but believe me, I've lived a full life with more adventures than most people can imagine. Before we go further, I want to ask, where are you watching this story from? Is it New York? California? Maybe somewhere far like Texas? Wherever you are, I hope you're comfortable because I have a story that might make your heart race a little and, I hope, teach you something about kindness, patience, and life's strange surprises. Now, let me take you back to a morning that started like any other but ended up changing me forever. I had been dreaming of owning my own car for years. At 75, most people think I would be content with riding buses, asking my neighbor for lifts, or just walking everywhere. But I had saved up my money carefully, cutting out little luxuries, baking extra pies to sell at the farmer's market, and even helping my grandchildren with odd jobs, all so I could finally buy the car of my dreams, a brand new Toyota Corolla. Shiny white, with leather seats that smelled so good I felt like I was sitting in a cloud every time I opened the door. I remember the salesman, a young man named Kevin. He was polite, smiling, and he promised me that this car would give me freedom like no other. And for a moment I believed him with all my heart. I felt proud as I drove it off the lot. The sun was shining and the radio was playing soft jazz. I waved to a few neighbors who were walking their dogs, and I waved back like a queen in a parade. Everything seemed perfect. Then it happened. I had been driving for just about 30 minutes, enjoying the soft hum of the Corolla's engine, when a black SUV suddenly swerved in front of me. There was no time to think. My hands tightened on the wheel, my heart leapt into my throat, and before I could even blink, there was a loud crash. Metal screeched, glass shattered, and my beautiful new car jolted violently. The airbags exploded in front of me, and I felt my body lifted slightly off the seat before falling back down. For a few terrifying seconds I couldn't breathe. My mind was blank, only aware of the screeching, the smell of smoke and burnt rubber, and the sound of my own heart pounding so loudly I thought it would burst. And there, in that moment, I realized that my lifelong dream, owning my first car, was now tangled up in chaos, metal, and fear. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking through the smoke. I could hear a child crying somewhere, and I could see someone yelling, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But I couldn't answer. My body was trembling. I wanted to move, to scream, to run, but I was frozen, staring at the twisted hood of my Corolla, the very car I had just bought, now crumpled like a paper toy. And then I saw him, Tommy, a young man who had been driving the SUV. His eyes were wide, full of guilt and fear, and he was trying to lift the door open. I didn't see you," he shouted, but I didn't hear him clearly. My mind was racing, thinking, how could this happen on the same day I bought my car? How could my luck turn from joy to disaster in a single moment? Even as I was trying to understand what was happening, I noticed a little girl standing a few feet away, holding her mother's hand tightly. Her eyes were big, scared, but curious. And in that moment, I realized that life isn't just about accidents, money, or cars. It's about the people around us. It's about the kindness we show, the patience we practice, and the empathy we offer, even when everything seems to be falling apart. I took a deep, shaky breath and tried to smile at Tommy, though I wasn't sure I could. "It's okay," I whispered, more to calm myself than him. He nodded, still shaking. And the little girl peeked at me from behind her mother, as if trying to see whether the older lady in the white car was going to be okay. I waved at her. She waved back hesitantly, and something inside me warmed. That morning started as a celebration of independence, a moment of pure joy. But now, it had turned into a whirlwind of fear, confusion, and uncertainty. The police arrived, the paramedics started asking questions, and I was guided out of my precious Corolla. And as I stood there, feeling the sun on my face and trying to calm my racing heart, I realized that life had a strange way of teaching lessons you never asked for. But what I didn't know yet was that this accident, on the very day I had bought my Toyota Corolla, was only the beginning. The most shocking part wasn't the crash itself, nor the damage to my car. No, the most shocking part was still waiting for me, hidden in the crowd, And it would change not only that day but the weeks that followed in ways I could never have imagined. And just as I was catching my breath, trying to reassure everyone that I was fine, a man ran toward me, yelling something I couldn't quite understand. The man running toward me looked panicked, waving his hands wildly. I squinted through the sunlight, trying to recognize him. And then I realized, it was my neighbor, Frank Miller. Frank was a tall man in his 50s, always wearing a baseball cap slightly crooked on his head. He had the kindest heart in the neighborhood, the kind of person who would lend you his lawnmower just because he knew you needed it. But right now his face was pale, his voice trembling. "Martha, Martha, are you hurt?" "I saw the whole thing," he shouted. I shook my head slowly, trying to calm my nerves. "No, Frank. Think I'm okay. Just shaken a bit." My hands were still trembling and my legs felt weak, but I managed to stay standing. He grabbed my arm gently, his grip firm but comforting. "You need to sit down. The ambulance is on the way. Can you walk?" I nodded, feeling the warmth of his concern. That small act of kindness, someone worrying about me, someone genuinely caring, made my heart feel lighter despite the accident. I realized then how important empathy and looking out for one another really were. Even in a moment of chaos, people's goodness could shine through. The little girl from earlier was still standing nearby, clutching her mother's hand tightly. "Are you okay, ma'am?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. I smiled at her despite my nerves. "I think so, sweetheart. Thank you for asking." She nodded, relieved, and tugged at her mother's sleeve, whispering something I couldn't hear. I waved at them again, feeling that strange little connection that happens when strangers share a moment of fear together. As we waited, Kevin, the car salesman who had sold me the Corolla, arrived, running like he was late for a race. He looked horrified when he saw the twisted metal of my car. "Mrs. Thompson, are you okay?" "Oh my goodness, I can't believe this." I'm fine, Kevin," I said, trying to reassure him, though my voice was shaky. I didn't want him to feel guilty. He hadn't caused this accident after all, but I could see the worry etched deeply on his face. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safe," Frank said. He guided me to a nearby bench under the shade of a tree. I sat down, still trying to catch my breath. My Corolla sat a few feet away, battered and crumpled, yet somehow, despite all of it, I felt a strange sense of calm. Maybe it was the kindness of strangers, or maybe it was just the relief of being alive. The ambulance arrived shortly after, and 2 paramedics approached me with gentle smiles. "Ma'am, we're just going to check you out, make sure you're not hurt," one said. They examined me carefully, checking my wrists, my legs, my head. Everything was fine, just a few scratches on my hands and some bruises forming on my arms. While they were checking me, I couldn't help but look at Tommy, the young man who had caused the accident. He was standing a little ways off, hands in his pockets, looking miserable. I could see the guilt written all over his face. My first instinct was anger, but then I remembered the lessons life had taught me over these 75 years. Everyone makes mistakes, and showing kindness, even when it's hard, can make a world of difference. I took a deep breath and walked over to him, my steps slow but deliberate. "Tommy," I said softly, "are you okay?" He blinked, startled. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean. It's okay," I interrupted gently. "Accidents happen. You didn't mean to hurt anyone. Let's just make sure everyone is safe." His shoulders relaxed slightly, and he nodded. I smiled at him, giving him a small, reassuring nod. In that moment, I realized that life is not just about the things we buy or the accidents we survive. It's about the grace we show, the understanding we offer, and the human connections that keep us going. After the paramedics cleared me, Kevin insisted on driving me home in his car. I felt a little embarrassed at first, but I accepted. As we drove, I looked back at my Corolla, now surrounded by police tape and concerned neighbors. My heart ached for it, yes, but it was only a car. Life, I realized, was far more precious than any vehicle. By the time I arrived home, my hands were trembling, but my spirit felt stronger. I made myself a cup of tea, sat down in my favorite chair, and reflected on the day. Just a few hours ago, I had been overjoyed, celebrating my new corolla. And now I had faced fear, uncertainty, and the fragility of life. Yet I had also witnessed the kindness of strangers, the empathy of my neighbors, and the courage that even a little girl could inspire by simply asking if I was okay. I was starting to think that maybe life was teaching me something important, that joy and tragedy often walk hand in hand, and that we must learn to embrace both with grace and patience. But just as I took my first sip of tea and settled into a small sense of calm, the phone rang. I picked it up, expecting it to be Kevin checking on me, or maybe Frank making sure I was all right. But instead, it was a voice I hadn't expected to hear in years, someone who would make that day even more complicated than it already was. "Grandma, it's me. We need to talk. It's about the car, and something else." My heart skipped a beat. Something else. I set the phone down, staring out the window at the street where my corolla had met its fate. And in that moment, I realized that the day was far from over, and that the most shocking event was still waiting for me, lurking just around the corner. I stared at the phone, my fingers frozen on the receiver. The voice on the other end was familiar, yet it had a sharp edge that I hadn't heard in years. "Grandma, it's me," the voice said again, softer this time, almost pleading. I swallowed hard. Could it be my granddaughter, Emily? She had been living across the country for the past 10 years, and we rarely spoke. Life and distance had stretched the bond thin, and now, of all days, she was calling me with a sense of urgency I couldn't ignore. "Emily, is that really you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yes, Grandma." "I need your help," she said, and I could hear the worry in her tone. "It's about your car accident, and something else that's happening with Dad. You have to come quickly." I felt my heart tighten. Dad, my son Robert, he had been dealing with health issues, and lately things had been complicated. I didn't know what had escalated, but I knew one thing for sure. Emily sounded serious. I quickly told Kevin and Frank about the call. They exchanged worried glances but didn't question my decision to leave. I grabbed my coat, my cane, and, hesitating for just a moment, looked out the window at my damaged corolla, now a crumpled reminder of how quickly life could change. When I arrived at Emily's apartment, I was surprised to see her pacing back and forth, phone in hand, eyes wide with worry. "Grandma!" she exclaimed when she saw me. She ran and hugged me tightly, and for a moment I felt her fear transfer to me. "What's going on, Emily? What happened?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She took a deep breath. "It's Dad, he's missing. He went out this morning after hearing about your accident, and no one knows where he is. I tried calling him, but his phone goes straight to voicemail. Then I found something strange near your corolla." I frowned, my mind racing. "Near my car? What do you mean?" Emily hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. "There was a note on the windshield. Said, 'You can't escape what's coming.' Grandma, I don't know who wrote it, but it looked serious." My stomach dropped. A note. Who would do such a thing? And why on a day that was already filled with enough chaos and fear? My heart started pounding again, just like it had earlier when the accident happened. But now the stakes felt even higher. I took Emily's hand gently. "All right, sweetheart. First we need to find your father. Then we'll deal with the rest. We'll figure this out together." We spent the next hour retracing Robert's steps. Emily had tracked down his usual morning spots, the local diner, the grocery store, and even the park where he sometimes went for walks. But there was no sign of him anywhere. Frank and Kevin stayed nearby, offering support. Frank called the police to report him missing, and Kevin helped Emily and me stay calm, reminding us that panic wouldn't solve anything. Yet, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, I felt the tension building. Something wasn't right, and my instincts told me that this wasn't just a coincidence. As we returned to Emily's apartment to regroup, I noticed movement outside the window. A shadowy figure was standing across the street, watching us. My heart froze. Could it be someone connected to the note? I blinked, and the figure was gone. My hand shook as I gripped Emily's arm. "Grandma, did you see that?" she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Yes," I said softly, trying to stay composed. "We need to be careful." Just then the phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. I hesitated, but Emily urged me to answer. "Hello," I said, my voice steady but cautious. "Mrs. Thompson," a distorted voice said, sending chills down my spine. "You think today is over, but it has only begun. Your choices will determine what happens next." I felt my knees weaken. I looked at Emily, who was pale and clutching my hand tightly. Who is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I admitted, my mind racing. "But we need to stay calm and think." Before I could say anything else, there was a sudden loud banging at the door. My heart leapt into my throat. Frank and Kevin moved quickly to stand near the door, while Emily and I stayed behind, holding on to each other. The banging continued, louder this time, almost desperate. And then a voice shouted, "Open up! This is urgent." I didn't recognize the voice, and fear gripped me like a vice. Something in the tone, sharp, urgent, almost panicked, made it clear that whoever it was had come with purpose. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Emily, stay close to me," I whispered. My hands were trembling again, but I knew I had to act, to face whatever was waiting behind that door. Frank reached for the doorknob, his hand firm but cautious. Kevin whispered, "Are you ready?" I nodded, gripping Emily's hand tightly. And with that, Frank slowly opened the door. Standing there in the doorway was someone I never expected to see again. Someone from my past. Someone who had a connection to my Corolla, the accident, and now, possibly my missing son. My heart stopped. The figure at the door made me gasp. My hands tightened around Emily's, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The person, tall, wearing a long coat that hid most of their features, looked at me with eyes I could not immediately place. And then, recognition hit me like a thunderbolt. "Grandma," the person said, their voice quivering. "It's me. Daniel. My first neighbor when I moved into this town over 50 years ago. A boy I had watched grow up, someone I had known since he was barely taller than the mailbox. But he wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man in his 40s, with sharp features and a look of urgency that made my chest tighten. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" I asked, my voice trembling. I didn't know where else to go," he admitted, stepping inside quickly. "I heard about your accident. And then the note. I think someone is targeting you. Targeting your family." Emily's eyes widened. "What do you mean, Daniel?" He took a deep breath and looked at both of us, his gaze serious. "It's complicated, Emily. But your father, he's involved whether he knows it or not. And that note on the Corolla. It wasn't random. Someone wants to scare your family, and I think it might be connected to something from my past. And yours, Grandma." Felt my head spin. My Corolla, the crash, the note, the missing Robert. It was all connected somehow, but I couldn't see the full picture yet. I wanted to run, to hide, but deep down I knew that avoiding it wouldn't help. Life had a way of testing you when you least expected it. Daniel's eyes softened as he noticed my fear. "I know this is a lot. But you're strong, Grandma. You've survived more than most. And together, we can figure this out." I nodded slowly, trying to steady myself. Daniel's words reminded me of something important. Even when life feels overwhelming, there are people who can help you carry the burden. Empathy, kindness, and trust could make the difference between despair and hope. We spent the next hour piecing together what Daniel knew. Apparently, months ago, he had stumbled upon a suspicious group in town. People who had been watching several families, including ours, for reasons he couldn't fully understand. When he learned about my Corolla purchase, he had a bad feeling, something in his gut that told him trouble was coming. And now, with the note and my father missing, that feeling had become urgent. Emily clung to me, her face pale but determined. "Grandma, we have to find Dad. We can't just wait." I squeezed her hand gently. I know, sweetheart. We'll find him. But we need to be smart. We can't rush blindly. Just then, Daniel pulled out his phone and showed us a photo. My heart skipped a beat. There in the grainy image was Robert, my son, standing near a dark alleyway not far from where the accident happened. He looked confused, maybe even scared, and something told me he had been forced there. We have to move quickly, Daniel said. If we don't, we might lose him. Frank and Kevin nodded, ready to help, their usual calm determination giving me strength. I felt a flicker of hope. Somehow, with their support and Daniel's knowledge, we had a chance. We gathered a few supplies, flashlights, water, my cane, and prepared to head out. Emily clung to my arm, and I felt her fear mixing with mine. But I also felt something else. Courage. Life had thrown a storm at us today, but we were facing it together, and that made all the difference. As we approached the alleyway, the shadows seemed longer, darker, and more menacing than usual. My mind raced with questions. Who had left the note? Who was watching us? And why had this all begun the same day I bought my Corolla? We turned a corner, flashlights cutting through the darkness, when suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind a dumpster. We froze. My heart leapt into my throat. Before I could even speak, a figure darted out from the shadows, knocking over a trash can. Emily screamed, and I instinctively stepped in front of her. Daniel and Frank shouted, and the figure ran off into the darkness. I felt my knees weaken. The world seemed to tilt around me. This was no longer just about a car accident. It was about danger, mystery, and protecting my family from forces we barely understood. And then, as we caught our breath and tried to make sense of what just happened, we heard a faint cry. It was coming from the other side of the alley. A small, frightened sound that could only belong to one person. "Dad!" Emily whispered, hope and fear mingling in her voice. I nodded, feeling a mix of dread and determination. Whatever had started with my Corolla accident had escalated into something much bigger. And now, the next moment would decide everything. The faint cry echoed through the alley, bouncing off the walls of brick and shadow. My heart raced faster than ever. "Dad!" Emily called softly, her voice trembling but filled with hope. I motioned for everyone to move slowly, careful not to make a sound that could scare whoever, or whatever, was nearby. Daniel held the flashlight steady, illuminating the alley's twists and turns. Frank and Kevin flanked us, alert and ready. I clutched Emily's hand tightly, my cane tapping softly against the pavement, grounding me in the midst of fear. Then through the shadows we saw him, Robert, my son. His face was pale, his eyes wide with confusion. He looked cornered, trapped between the walls and a figure looming over him. My stomach clenched. I could barely believe what I was seeing. "Dad!" Emily shouted again, running forward. Robert's eyes lit up at the sound of his daughter's voice, and he stumbled slightly toward her. But just as he moved, the shadowy figure stepped forward. It was a man, tall and muscular, wearing a dark hoodie that hid most of his face. He had something in his hand, a metal pipe maybe or a stick, I couldn't tell. Fear gripped me so tightly I felt like I couldn't breathe. Daniel stepped forward quickly, his hands raised. "Hey, back off. We don't want trouble." The man didn't move. His posture was tense, deliberate, and every instinct in me screamed danger. My mind raced. What if he was part of the group Daniel had warned us about? What if he intended to hurt Robert? Frank, sensing my hesitation, whispered, "Martha, step back and let us handle this." I shook my head, my voice trembling but firm. "No, I'm not leaving my son. Not now." Emily grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with worry. "Grandma, be careful." I felt a surge of determination. All my life I had faced challenges, from raising children on a tight budget to helping neighbors in need. But this was different. This was my family in immediate danger. And I would do whatever it took to protect them. Daniel moved slowly toward Robert, his voice calm and measured. "Listen to me. Step aside, and no one gets hurt." The man's hand tightened around the metal pipe, or whatever it was, and suddenly he lunged. Time seemed to slow. I felt Emily's grip on my hand tighten. Frank and Kevin moved to intercept him. I raised my voice, shouting, "Stop! Leave him alone." There was a crash, a shout, and a flash of movement. The man stumbled, tripping over a trash can. Daniel seized the moment, rushing forward to grab him. Frank and Kevin quickly joined in, and together they managed to subdue him, pinning him against the alley wall. I rushed to Robert, my hands shaking as I held his face gently. "Are you okay? Oh, my dear, are you okay?" He blinked at me, confusion and relief mixing in his eyes. "Mom, I don't know. I was walking and then, someone grabbed me." Emily hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You're safe now, Dad. We've got you." The man struggled under Daniel and Frank's grip, muttering something that we couldn't hear clearly. The police arrived just moments later, taking him into custody. He was connected to the mysterious group Daniel had mentioned, and the note on my Corolla was apparently part of a larger plan to intimidate families like ours. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. My Corolla, the accident, the shadowy figures, the note. It had all led to this moment. My son was safe, my family was together, and somehow, through courage, empathy, and teamwork, we had survived the day's chaos. As the police questioned Robert, Daniel, and the others, I realized something profound. Life throws challenges at you without warning, sometimes small, sometimes terrifyingly large. But kindness, courage, and compassion, these are what guide you through. My heart swelled with gratitude for the people who had helped us. Daniel, Frank, Kevin, Emily. And even the little girl who had waved at me near my Corolla that morning. Later, as we drove home, Emily holding her father's hand and Daniel in the passenger seat, I looked back at the city streets and reflected. That day, my Corolla had been damaged. My heart had raced with fear, but I had also witnessed bravery and kindness in ways I never imagined. And yet, even as I sipped my tea that evening, safe in my home, a nagging thought lingered in my mind. Whoever had sent that note, whoever had tried to scare us, hadn't been working alone. There were more questions, more mysteries waiting. And I knew. The day was far from over. Just as I was settling into my chair, the phone rang again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, a voice I hadn't expected said, cold and precise, "Mrs. Thompson, you think this is over? It's only just begun. And next time, someone might not be so lucky." My hand froze on the receiver. Emily and Daniel looked at me, worry etched on their faces. My heart sank. The day that began with a simple joy, the purchase of my Toyota Corolla, had turned into a whirlwind of fear, courage, and mysteries that refused to end. And now, it seemed, the next chapter of danger was already on its way. The voice on the phone sent a shiver down my spine. I held it tightly, my knuckles white, as Emily and Daniel exchanged worried glances. Who is this?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I admitted, trying to steady my own voice. "But whoever it is, they're not done with us." Daniel leaned forward, frowning. "Mrs. Thompson, we need to be extremely careful. Whoever sent that note and threatened you today, this is just the beginning. They know you, they know your family, and they want something from you." I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. Life had a strange way of testing people. Today had started as a joyous day, celebrating a simple dream, a new Corolla, and now it had turned into a series of events I could never have imagined. But I reminded myself, fear could only control you if you let it. Courage, empathy, and quick thinking, that's what had gotten us through so far. And I wasn't going to stop now. Emily stepped closer to me. "Grandma, what do we do next?" "We stay together," I said firmly. "We protect each other, we think carefully, and we don't let fear rule us. Whoever this is, they underestimate the strength of family." Daniel nodded. "I agree. We need to be proactive. First, let's secure your home. Make sure there's no way anyone can sneak in unnoticed. Frank and Kevin had already volunteered to help. Frank checked the locks on doors and windows while Kevin went through the house, ensuring nothing had been tampered with. Emily and I stayed close, watching and learning. The adrenaline from earlier hadn't fully left my body, and I felt both anxious and alert at the same time. Once the house was secured, Daniel pulled out a notebook. "We need to track patterns," he said. "From the note on the Corolla to the man in the alley to this phone call. There's a pattern here. If we can figure it out, we can anticipate the next move." I nodded, impressed by his calm and organized approach. "You're right, Daniel. Knowledge is power. Fear comes from the unknown. The more we know, the safer we can be." Emily sat next to me, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Grandma, do you think this will ever end?" I looked at her, her young face showing so much worry. "Yes, dear. It will end. But we must face it with courage, kindness, and patience. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is to stay calm and help others through the storm." Just as we settled into this moment of cautious calm, there was a loud knock at the front door. My heart jumped again. "Who could that be?" Emily whispered. Daniel held up a hand, signaling for everyone to be still. He approached the door slowly, peeking through the peephole. His eyes widened and he whispered, "It's a delivery. Food, I think." I exhaled in relief. "Oh, thank goodness," I murmured. But as Daniel opened the door and reached for the box, I noticed something odd. A small, folded envelope had been taped to the side of the delivery box. My hands shook as I picked it up, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Emily and Daniel watched me, their faces pale. "Grandma, what is it?" Emily asked. I unfolded the envelope carefully. Inside was a single piece of paper, with neat handwriting that made my blood run cold. "You've seen what happens when you think you're safe. Keep moving, keep hiding, or someone you love will pay the price." My fingers trembled as I held the note. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. Not just fear, but a sense of responsibility. This wasn't random. Whoever was behind this had a plan, and they were testing us, pushing us to see how we would react. Daniel's jaw tightened. "This is serious. We need to figure out who's doing this, and fast." I nodded, determination settling into my chest. "Then we start by not panicking. We stay together, we watch each other's backs, and we keep helping one another. Fear won't win today, not if we stick together." Emily hugged me tightly, her trust in me a comfort I couldn't put into words. "Grandma, you always know what to do," she whispered. I smiled at her, even as my heart raced. "I've learned a few things in 75 years, my dear. And one of them is that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it." But even as I said those words, a nagging thought lingered. Whoever was threatening us wasn't finished yet. And the next move, the next extreme event, was coming. I could feel it in my bones. Just as we were starting to gather our thoughts and plan, there was a sudden crash from the backyard, like someone had thrown a heavy object against the fence. My heart leapt into my throat. Daniel and Frank rushed toward the sound, Emily and I close behind. And when we reached the backyard, my eyes widened in shock. The back gate had been forced open, and there in the shadows someone or something was moving quickly toward the house. I took a deep breath, gripping Emily's hand tightly. "Hold on, sweetheart. Whatever happens, we face it together." The night that had begun with a simple accident, a car crash, and a mysterious note had escalated into a full-blown threat against my family. And now, it seemed, the real danger was about to unfold, right in our own backyard. The shadows in the backyard seemed to shift as the figure moved closer to the house. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would echo through the neighborhood. Emily clung to my side, whispering, "Grandma, what do we do?" I took a deep breath, trying to calm the fear that threatened to overwhelm me. "We stay together. We don't panic. We protect each other," I said firmly. "Courage doesn't mean we aren't afraid. It means we act even when we are." Daniel and Frank approached cautiously, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Kevin stayed near the back door, ready to block any unexpected moves. I felt a wave of gratitude. Even in danger, the people around me, family, friends, neighbors, had my back. That sense of empathy, loyalty, and shared courage gave me a spark of hope in the darkness. Suddenly, the figure stepped into the light. It was a man mid-30s wearing a black hoodie, with a hood shadowing most of his face. He froze when he saw us. My stomach twisted. Something about his stance felt deliberate, as if he had been waiting for this moment. Daniel stepped forward. "Who are you? What do you want?" The man didn't answer at first. Then in a low, steady voice he said, "You've been meddling where you shouldn't. You've seen too much." Felt a chill. "Meddling?" asked, my voice shaking. "We've only been trying to protect our family." He laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "Protecting your family? You don't understand. Everything you do, every move you make, it's being watched. And some things can't be undone." Emily tightened her grip on my hand. "Grandma, is he going to hurt us?" I shook my head, trying to mask my fear. "We're stronger together," I whispered. "We've faced worse, and we'll face this too." Suddenly, the man lunged toward the back gate. Frank reacted instantly, grabbing him and trying to hold him back, but the man was strong. A struggle ensued, flashlight swinging, a chair knocked over. Daniel and Kevin jumped in, and the backyard erupted into chaos. I shouted, "Stop! Leave him alone!" even as my heart raced. Emily pulled me back, but I refused to let go of her. We were in this together. During the scuffle, the man dropped something on the ground. Daniel picked it up quickly, a small USB drive. My curiosity mingled with dread. "What is that?" I asked. Daniel's eyes widened. "This might explain everything. This could be the reason they've been targeting your family, Mrs. Thompson." I felt a flicker of hope. Knowledge, understanding what we were up against, could turn fear into power. But the man wasn't done. He shoved Frank and bolted into the shadows, disappearing into the night before the police could arrive. Emily and I huddled together, watching the darkness swallow him. My heart was still racing, but there was a sense of relief. Robert was safe, the intruder had left something behind, and we now had a clue, a tangible lead. Daniel inserted the USB drive into his laptop. His hands steady despite the chaos. Images, videos, and documents began to appear on the screen. My eyes widened as I scrolled through the files. There were maps, lists of families, and even videos of neighborhoods being monitored. And there, among them, were pictures of my Corolla, the accident site, and my family. This is why they started with your car," Daniel said quietly. "It wasn't random. They were sending a message, testing reactions, and preparing for bigger moves. Whoever is behind this, they've been planning it for a long time." I felt a mix of fear and determination. My heart ached at the thought of people using fear as a weapon, targeting families, trying to control lives. But I also felt a surge of resolve. They underestimated the strength of kindness, empathy, and courage, qualities that had carried my family through every storm. Emily leaned against me, whispering, "Grandma, what do we do now?" I took a deep breath. "Now, we keep going. We stay together, we stay alert, and we keep helping each other. And we face this next challenge with everything we have." But just as I said those words, a sudden noise came from the front of the house, a loud crash like glass breaking. My stomach dropped. The intruder wasn't alone. Someone or something was inside the house. I grabbed Emily's hand, my heart racing. "Hold on tight, sweetheart. We've survived this far. But the next moment could change everything." The sound of breaking glass made my heart leap into my throat. Emily pressed herself against me, trembling, and I wrapped my arms around her, trying to shield her and give both of us courage. Daniel and Frank were already moving toward the front of the house, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Kevin stayed near the back door, watching for any surprises. "Stay calm," I whispered to Emily. "We've faced danger before. We can do this again." The noise continued. Shards of glass crunching underfoot, doors opening, soft footsteps moving quickly through the house. Whoever was inside was careful, deliberate, and clearly had a plan. My mind raced. Why target us? Why my family? Why now? Daniel crept forward, signaling for Frank and Kevin to follow quietly. Emily and I stayed close, our backs against the wall. I gripped my cane tightly, feeling its weight as a reminder that I could still act if needed. Then, through the shadows of the living room, we saw them. Two figures moving quickly, trying to stay hidden. One was taller, the other shorter, both dressed in dark clothes. My stomach twisted in fear. "Stay back," Daniel shouted, his voice firm. "We don't want to hurt you, but leave now, or we'll call the police." The taller figure froze, then lunged toward the kitchen. Frank reacted instantly, stepping in front of him. There was a struggle, a loud crash as furniture toppled over. The shorter figure grabbed something from the counter, a small black box, and ran toward the back of the house. Kevin and Daniel gave chase. Emily and I stayed frozen near the wall, watching the chaos unfold. My mind was spinning, but even amid the fear, I felt a strange clarity. Life had taught me that courage and empathy were powerful tools, not just brute force. If we could act with care, we could survive this without anyone getting hurt. Suddenly, there was a loud shout from the backyard. Daniel had caught the shorter intruder near the gate. Frank had the taller one pinned against the wall. Kevin called out to the police, who were already on their way. The intruders struggled, but it was clear. They weren't expecting the resistance they met from a grandmother, her family, and a few brave neighbors. I moved toward Robert and Emily, pulling them into a tight embrace. "You're safe now," I whispered. "We're all safe." But even as I said those words, I knew the danger wasn't fully over. The black box the intruder had grabbed from the kitchen was still unaccounted for. Daniel retrieved the USB drive from earlier and examined it again, his face serious. "This," he said quietly, "is only part of the plan. Whoever these people are, they've been targeting multiple families. The note, the Corolla, the break-in, it's all connected. They want something, and if we don't act carefully, someone else could get hurt." Emily looked at me, her eyes wide. "Grandma, what do we do next?" I hugged her tightly. "We stay strong. We stay together. And we don't let fear control us. Whoever is behind this, they've underestimated what family can do when it sticks together." Just as we were catching our breath, a sudden sound made me freeze. It was a soft but distinct noise, a key turning in the front door lock. My heart leapt into my throat. "They're back," Daniel whispered, his voice low. "They've learned we're not alone." Emily pressed herself against me, her small hand trembling in mine. I could feel her fear, but I also felt something else, a spark of courage. We had survived accidents, threats, and strangers trying to harm us. And now we were facing the next extreme event together. I took a deep breath, gripping my cane, and whispered to Emily, "Hold on tight. Whatever happens next, we face it together." The front door slowly creaked open, and a shadow fell across the threshold. My heart skipped a beat. The intruders weren't finished, and whatever was about to happen next would change everything. The front door creaked slowly, sending a chill down my spine. Emily pressed herself closer against me, her small hands trembling in mine. Daniel signaled for Frank and Kevin to stay alert, flashlights in hand, as we moved cautiously toward the door. I could hear the intruder breathing softly on the other side. Whoever it was, they were patient, calculating. My heart raced as I gripped my cane like a lifeline, reminding myself that courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means acting despite it. "Stay behind me, Emily," I whispered. "No matter what happens, we stick together." Daniel peeked through the crack in the door. His eyes widened and he whispered, "It's the taller one. He's alone this time." I took a deep breath. "All right, let's talk. Whoever you are, you don't need to hurt anyone. We just want to be safe." There was a pause. Then a low, gruff voice answered, "You think you've won. You don't understand. You've seen a fraction of what we can do." I felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. My family, my home, my life. They couldn't just come in and try to terrify us. I straightened my back and spoke firmly. "You've underestimated us. We may be ordinary people, but we protect each other. And we won't be intimidated." There was a tense silence. Then the door suddenly burst open, and the man stepped inside. I froze for a moment, then pushed Emily behind me and gripped my cane tightly. Frank and Daniel moved to intercept him, but the man was fast, swinging his arms to knock over a lamp. Chaos erupted. Kevin tried to block the intruder, and a vase shattered on the floor. Emily cried out, but I held her tight. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're together. We're safe." The man lunged toward the back of the house, and Daniel followed closely, shouting, "Stop! Police are on the way." Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the kitchen. The black box the intruder had tried to steal earlier had fallen, spilling papers and a small device across the floor. My heart skipped a beat. That box, it contained evidence. Evidence that could explain everything. The accident, the threats, and the reason our family had been targeted. I realized in that moment that we had been given a chance. A chance to uncover the truth and put an end to this nightmare. But first we had to survive the intruder. Frank managed to tackle the man near the kitchen doorway, pinning him to the floor. Daniel grabbed the black box and lifted it safely out of reach. Kevin called the police, who were now less than 5 minutes away. Emily clung to me, her face pale but determined. "Grandma, is it over?" I smiled at her, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Not yet, sweetheart. But we're close. We just have to hold on a little longer." The intruder struggled, but Frank held him firmly until the sound of sirens filled the night. The police burst in, taking the man into custody. They were surprised at how organized and brave our little group had been, but I felt a quiet pride. Courage, empathy, and teamwork had carried us through yet another extreme moment. Daniel handed me the black box. "This," he said, "contains everything. Names, plans, evidence. With this, the authorities can finally stop them from targeting other families." I nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. My Corolla accident, the threats, the break-ins, they had all been terrifying, but they had also shown me something powerful. Even in the darkest moments, courage, kindness, and love could guide you. Emily hugged her father tightly. "Dad, we're okay now. We're together." Robert smiled, exhausted but grateful. "Thanks to you, Mom. And to all of us working together." I looked at my family, at Daniel, Frank, and Kevin, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life had thrown us one of its harshest storms, but we had survived. And the lessons I had learned over 75 years, about kindness, courage, and empathy, had carried us through. But even as the police led the intruder away and we started to breathe again, I knew one thing: life's surprises don't always come gently. The next day, the next challenge, would be another test. But for now, we had faced the storm together, and we had won. The morning sun streamed through the windows, warm and golden, as I sat in my favorite chair with Emily curled up next to me. The house was quiet for the first time in what felt like forever. Robert was downstairs, talking with the police, ensuring they had all the evidence from the black box. Daniel, Frank, and Kevin had gone home, leaving behind a sense of calm and reassurance that made the house feel safe again. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past few days lift slightly from my shoulders. My Corolla was still damaged, the memory of the accident still fresh in my mind, but it no longer felt like the center of fear. Instead, it had become the spark that led us to confront challenges we never imagined, to discover strength we didn't know we had. Emily stirred and looked up at me, her eyes bright. "Grandma, are we really safe now?" I smiled at her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, sweetheart, we're safe. And we're stronger than we realized." I thought back to the lessons of the past few days. The kindness of neighbors who ran to help, the courage of Daniel and Frank, Kevin's unwavering support, and the bravery of my family. Each person had played a role in keeping us together, showing that empathy and cooperation were far more powerful than fear or malice. Robert came upstairs, holding a cup of coffee for me. "Mom," he said, sitting beside me, "I can't believe what happened. But I also can't believe how everyone came together. You led us, even when things were terrifying." I chuckled softly, though my heart still beat a little faster from the memories of the past days. "Well, son, 75 years of life teaches you a thing or two about surviving storms. But the most important lesson is that we survive together. We help each other. We show kindness and empathy, even when it's hard." Emily nodded vigorously. "I get it, Grandma. It's like, even when scary things happen, being kind and brave makes a difference." I hugged her tightly. "Exactly, dear. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. And kindness, well, that's what makes us human." Later that day, we walked outside to see the damage to my Corolla. The scratches and dents were still there, but for the first time I didn't feel sadness or anger. Instead, I felt gratitude. That car, that simple symbol of joy, had led us to face fears, protect one another, and discover the strength within our family and friends. Daniel joined us, smiling gently. "Mrs. Thompson, you've been amazing. Your courage inspired everyone today. And Emily and Robert, you've been incredible too." I looked around at my family, at the people who had risked themselves to help us, and felt an overwhelming sense of hope. Life could be unpredictable, frightening, and even unfair, but there was something unshakable in the love and courage we could share. Emily leaned against me, whispering, "Grandma, will we ever forget this day?" I smiled, stroking her hair. "Maybe not, dear. But we won't remember it for the fear. We'll remember it for the courage, the kindness, and how we all came together. That's what matters." That evening, as the sun set, I sat on the porch, sipping a warm cup of tea. My Corolla sat in the driveway, battered but still mine, a reminder that joy and fear often walk hand in hand. And yet, with love, empathy, and courage, even the scariest days could be transformed into lessons about life, family, and humanity. I thought about the people who had helped us, the strangers who showed kindness, and the bravery of my family. I realized that life's storms weren't just challenges. They were opportunities to grow, to connect, and to show the best of ourselves. And so, with the night settling around us, I whispered a quiet thanks to the universe for giving me 75 years of lessons, for teaching me that courage comes in many forms, and that the heart, when guided by empathy, could weather anything. My Corolla may have been damaged, my day may have begun with an accident, but in the end, we had learned something far more valuable. That love, courage, and kindness are the true engines that drive life forward. And in that moment I knew, no matter what tomorrow might bring, I was ready.